Today we're going to be studying from Luke chapter 20. One day, as Jesus was teaching the people in the temple courts and proclaiming the good news, the chief priests and the teachers of the law, together with the elders, came up to him. "Tell us by what authority you are doing these things," they said. "Who gave you this authority?" He replied, "I will also ask you a question. Tell me, John's baptism, was it from heaven or of human origin?" They discussed it among themselves and said, "If we say from heaven, he will ask, 'Why didn't you believe him?' But if we say of human origin, all the people will stone us because they are persuaded that John was a prophet." So they answered, "We don't know where it was from." Jesus said, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I am doing these things." So why isn't Jesus willing to answer their question? Is he ashamed to let them know that he's doing things in the name of Jesus, in the name of his Father? No, he knows that they're there to trap him. They're looking for a reason to put him to death. If he proclaims he's Messiah right now, he knows that that is eventually going to be the testimony that's going to cause him to be crucified. So he's delaying answering that, not because he's ashamed, because it's not the right time for him to go to the cross. It's interesting and of course, we're not surprised at how wise Jesus is, but instead of having to say, "I'm not going to tell you," he flips it around and says, "Okay, if you answer my question, I'll answer yours." And he already knew that they weren't going to answer this question correctly, because if they did, it would embarrass them. So he asked about the question of John's baptism. He knew that they had refused to be baptized by John. So when he's asking that question, was it from God or is it from man? He knows that if they say from heaven, it's going to make them look bad because they never got baptized by John. So they won't answer that. They won't answer it's from man because they know that the crowd believes that John was a prophet and that they'll get ran out of the town if they answer that John wasn't a prophet. He was a very honored prophet. So they just say, "Well, we don't know." And that way Jesus didn't have to answer his question as well. Verse 9, he went on to tell the people this parable. "A man planted a vineyard, rented it to some farmers, and went away for a long time. At harvest time, he sent a servant to the tenants so they would give him some of the fruit of the vineyard. But the tenants beat him and sent him away empty-handed. He sent another servant, but that one also they beat and treated shamefully and sent away empty-handed. He sent still a third, and they wounded him and threw him out. Then the owner of the vineyard said, 'What shall I do? I will send my son, whom I love. Perhaps they will respect him.' But when the tenants saw him, they talked the matter over. 'This is the heir,' they said. 'Let's kill him, and the inheritance will be ours.' So they threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. What then will the owner of the vineyard do to them? He will come and kill those tenants and give the vineyard to others." When the people heard this, they said, "God forbid." Hey, remember, a parable is a earthly story with a spiritual meaning. So we have to figure out who all these people are. Who is the owner of this field? It's referring to God the Father. And who are the people that are harvesting and throwing out the seed and trying to make believers in God? It's the prophets. It's other disciples that were teaching the Word of God. It could be teachers of the law that actually are living the life, but there's a lot of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law that are not actually practicing the law at this point. They're not trying to make converts. And Jesus is saying in parts of Matthew 23 that they travel over land and sea to make one convert. And because they don't believe the truth and they're not teaching the truth, it says that they make those converts twice as much a son of hell as they are. So if they had the right kind of heart and they were really going out and they were a teacher of the law that was teaching the right thing, they were part of the people that were planting that harvest. They had the true message that they were willing to share with everyone. But all throughout time, whether it's at this time or whether it's been other times in Israel's history, the true prophets and the true teachers are usually the ones that are being persecuted. And that's what this story is reflecting, that when God has tried over and over again to send a message of repentance, of the true gospel, of the true teachers of the law who are going to tell them what they need to do, they don't want to. Many of the Jews don't want to hear the truth. They just want to kill those prophets and teachers or hurt them. And that's what this parable is showing, up until the time when the father says, okay, then I'm going to send my son. And some of them will listen to Jesus, we're going to see, but most of them are going to reject Jesus. It seems like he has all these crowds all the time following after him and are just so happy that they're calling out the leaders that are not doing the right thing. They rejoice in that at times. But at some point, we're going to see when Jesus is ready to go to the cross, somehow those teachers of the law are going to convince the whole crowd that Jesus really isn't the Son of God, and they're going to turn on Jesus. The same ones that had been so happy to hear Jesus challenging these Pharisees and Sadducees that have been teaching the wrong thing are going to actually be convinced to go on their side at the end. And that's again how Satan can deceive people. One minute people are on your side, you say something and somebody convinces you that that thing that person said was bad, so the whole crowd can turn on somebody just overnight. And we see that in our world today. We can see it all over, whether it's religious things going on or if it's things that are secular people that are saying things and then they say one thing and everybody turns on them. It's we're living in a crazy world, but this really is showing how the world really hasn't changed. It's been like that all the way from the time that Jesus came on the earth, from before he came on the earth, when the prophets were on the earth. It's been, Isaiah was hundreds of years before Jesus. He was killed by being sawed in half. I mean, so many of the prophets lost their lives by trying to tell the truth and get people to come to faith and have their hearts changed. So what is going to happen to those people when Jesus comes back? That's who the son was Jesus. Now, when the owner sends the son back, what is going to happen to those people that had killed all those people, that had not followed the law? He's telling us that in verse 17. Jesus looked directly at them and asked, then what is the meaning of that which is written, the stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone? Everyone who falls on that stone will be broken to pieces. Anyone on whom it falls will be crushed. Okay, so he's confirming what he just said in verse 16. When the son comes back, he's the cornerstone. He is the cornerstone which the builders and the people around the Jews rejected. So what's going to happen when he comes back? He's going to crush the people that were the unbelievers. He's going to put them to death. Again, we talked about this in the last Luke chapter 19. When Jesus comes back, he's coming as the judge that is bringing vengeance on those who did not know God and did not obey the gospel of the Lord. And we can also see that in 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, verses 8 to 10, around that area. So unfortunately, again, we don't like to think of God as being this God of vengeance, but that is. We want him to be a God of vengeance when we're the ones that need avenging. So it's not a bad thing. But this is something that the teachers of law are going to get upset when they hear this. Listen to their response, because they know, they understand that they're the ones that have been killing everybody. And they're understanding this whole thing about that Jesus is pointing out to the crowd, basically, that they're the ones that are the evil ones. They want to kill him. And so this is how they respond in verse 19. The teachers of the law and the chief priests looked for a way to arrest him immediately, because they knew he had spoken this parable against them. But they were afraid of the people. If they could have put Jesus to death right that minute, they would have done it. They were so angry. They wanted him put to death immediately. The only thing that held them back from doing that was they knew the crowd was on Jesus' side at that point. They had to somehow turn the crowd against him before they had the ability to put Jesus to death, and they knew that they couldn't do that right now. So they were going to be looking for another opportunity to be able to do that. They weren't going to give up. They wanted him dead. Verse 20. Keeping a close watch on him, they sent spies who pretended to be sincere. So now what do they resort to? Sending spies, people who are going to pretend to be so good, asking Jesus these questions, hoping that they can find a way to trap him again, to have him say something that is going to be blasphemous. They hoped to catch Jesus in something he said so that they might hand him over to the power and authority of the governor. So who is this referring to? Who is the governor at that time? Pilate. And eventually we know that they will hand Jesus over to Pilate. But so far, Jesus hasn't done anything where they can go to Pilate and say he needs to be put to death for this, so they're trying to trap him. Verse 21. So the spies question him, Teacher, we know that you speak and teach what is right, and that you do not show partiality, but teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. Is it right for us to pay taxes to Caesar or not? He saw through their duplicity and said to them, Show me a denarius. Whose image and inscription are on it? Caesar's, they replied. He said to them, Then give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. They were unable to trap him in what he had said there in public, and astonished by his answer, they became silent. They were hoping that Jesus was saying, oh no, don't pay money to Caesar. He's doing bad things to people. He's not a good person. And Jesus, being the wisest man, obviously, because God is the most wise of everyone, says, okay, why don't you show me a coin? So they pull out a coin, and there's that picture of Caesar's head on there. And so he was saying, well, who does this belong to? Whose picture is that? Caesar's. And he says, well, give it to Caesar then. Give to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, but you should be giving to God the things that are God's. And I think this is a story also for us. I know there's a lot of people that don't like to pay taxes. And we don't always have very honest people that are getting the money from our taxes. I think God is sending us a message through this parable that he wants us to pay our taxes, whether the people are righteous or not righteous, because he'll deal with their unrighteousness. It's not our place to say that we're going to disobey our person in authority, because it says that God puts those people in the power. So if they charge taxes, we're supposed to pay our taxes. And if they're being unjust with that, God will take vengeance on that person. He can raise that person up. He can take them down. But we are not supposed to be breaking the law by not paying taxes because we don't think this person is righteous or good. We are still supposed to follow the laws of the land, and we are not responsible for how they spend that money. We are only responsible for obeying God, and that's what I think God's point is. You obey and do the things that I've asked you to do the things that are God's, and give to God the things that are God's, and to the authorities and power, you got to do that as well. Verse 27. Some of the Sadducees who say there is no resurrection came to Jesus with a question. Teacher, they said, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies and leaves a wife but no children, the man must marry the widow and raise up offspring for his brother. And that is from the Old Testament law. What would happen is if a wife married her husband and he died early before he could give her any children, what would happen was that the next brother, the next oldest brother, would be the one that was supposed to marry his wife, the wife of the person, of the oldest son that died. He was supposed to bear a child, and they were supposed to name that child after the father who had died. There was a way that a man could say no, though, if he didn't want to marry his brother's wife. And it was a process where they had to go before the elders, and she had to spit in his face, and he had to take off his sandal, and it was a ceremony like they had to go through that was supposed to shame the man, that he wasn't willing to do what God really wanted him to do, was to bear a son in honor of his brother and married the deceased brother's wife. Okay, so this is the law. It's not something we do today, but it is something that came out of the Jewish law that was written in the Old Testament under the law of Moses. Verse 29. Now there were 7 brothers. The first one married a woman and died childless. The second and then the third married her, and in the same way the 7 died, leaving no children. Finally, the woman died too. Now then, at the resurrection, whose wife will she be, since the 7 were married to her? Now, they're trying to trap him again to try to get him to say something that will trap him and go against their law so that they can have a charge to bring him before Pilate. Verse 34. Jesus replied, "The people of this age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are considered worthy of taking part in the age to come and in the resurrection from the dead will neither marry nor be given in marriage. And they can no longer die, for they are like the angels. They are God's children, since they are children of the resurrection. But in the account of the burning bush, even Moses showed that the dead rise, for he calls the Lord the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living, for to him all are alive." Some of the teachers of the law responded, "Well said, teacher," and no one dared to ask him any more questions. What's going on here? Well, Jesus is again so smart because the Sadducees are coming to him, and the Sadducees believe something different about the resurrection than what the Pharisees do. Well, the Pharisees are there as well, and Jesus knows that this resurrection thing is going to be a hot button for one side or the other. And so he is telling this story to the Sadducees, and it's the Sadducees that do not believe in a resurrection. They don't believe in a resurrection. They don't believe in angels. They believe that the here and now, and that's it. You either have this life and you do right here, and then that's it. Nothing to see later. And once you're dead, you're dead. You don't ever rise up. But he knew that the Pharisees did believe in a resurrection. And so it's the Sadducees that are trying to trap him, and he is not going to let them trap him by saying that there's going to be marriage in heaven as well. If Jesus were to say there's going to be marriage in heaven as well, then that would upset the Pharisees, because they believe in angels and that angels are not supposed to be getting married. So if Jesus says that there's going to be this marriage in heaven, then he's going to be saying something that would get the Pharisees upset. So they're being really tricky here. But of course, Jesus knows the truth about it, and he's just going to speak the truth. What's going to happen in the resurrection? He acknowledges that there is a resurrection, and he also acknowledges that there is going to be no marriage in the resurrection. That when we do have our resurrected bodies, we neither marry nor are given in marriage. We're like the angels. So that gives us a clue as to what kind of glorified bodies we're going to get when we are raised from the dead. We are going to have we're going to have bodies like the angels. What kind of bodies do they have? Well, they can take on human form. They can take on, even they can speak through a donkey, like what we see with Balaam. They can go through walls. They can travel from one state to another in a second. They're not bound by time. They're not bound by any kind of body where it's limited, like it doesn't get tired. It doesn't have to eat. We're going to eat. Our spiritual bodies are going to be able to eat, because we see that the angels have sat down before and ate with people, and Jesus ate with people when he came back and rose from the dead. But what we don't need is that food to be able to live. It's more of, I think he's allowing us to eat because it's something enjoyable. It's something that we enjoy, and so our spiritual bodies will be able to eat, but it's not like we need that food to be able to live. But what's the result of him sharing this? The Pharisees are happy and they're saying, well said. They actually are giving him kudos here when they just wanted to put him to death. And the Sadducees are the ones that are going to be quiet now because the Pharisees have already been applauding what Jesus is doing. It's like they're divided. They're not coming together yet. So it's not the right time still to try to put him to death. Verse 41. Then Jesus said to them, why is it said that the Messiah is the son of David? David himself declares in the book of Psalms, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. David calls him Lord. How then can he be his son? Jesus decides to flip the tables on them, and he's going to ask them a question and say, how can David say that Messiah is his son when he calls him Lord? And they can't answer that question. I think he's trying to get them to finally see that they're not going to be able to trap him. He's got so much more that he can do to flip the tables on them. And I believe it's at this point that they're not going to be trying to trap him anymore with questions that they realize that they are not doing very well with trying to trap him. So they're going to have to look for a different way to go about having him put to death. Okay, verse 45. While all the people were listening, Jesus said to his disciples, beware of the teachers of the law. They like to walk around in flowing robes and love to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces and have the most important seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at banquets. They devour widows' houses and, for a show, make lengthy prayers. These men will be punished most severely. And this is where, if you're going to be a teacher of the law, and this is said in the book of James as well, in James chapter 3, I think it's in verse 1, where it says, those who want to teach the law will be judged more strictly. He said, not many of you should be teachers, my brothers, because anyone who teaches will be judged more strictly. So that's why they're going to have this more strict judgment. They've been a teacher of the law, and because they're not only affecting their salvation, they're affecting the salvation of the people that they're sharing the message with. They're causing a lot of people to fall away. So what kind of judgment are they going to get? A more severe judgment. And here is again the different levels. It seems like there's going to be some people who are lost who are going to receive a worse punishment than others who did stuff out of ignorance. And how God's going to do all that judging, again, he's the righteous judge. He will do it perfectly. But if he's saying that these people will be punished most severely, it's obviously ramped up than the other person that has done something out of ignorance that was going to be beaten with a few stripes. How do you think that the Pharisees felt after he said this? Beware of those teachers of the law. Obviously, they're going to be very insulted. They're going to probably be even more angry, and again, just are grinding their teeth, wondering when in the world can we put this guy to death? Let's let him be quiet. We don't want him going around saying all this bad stuff about us. But this is exactly describing what the Pharisees were like. They did everything for a show, but they didn't care about people. They didn't care about the well-being of widows, of the poor. They cared about themselves and getting all this honor and having people think they're so righteous when they're really not. They can do these long prayers, but it's a bunch of vain repetition that God says that he was listening to when they would pray. So they are not doing things with the right kind of heart. They're doing it with selfish motives. And because of that, they are not going to be saved, even though they're the teachers of the law. You would expect our preachers, and, we're comparing today what's going on at this point. We got a lot of preachers today that are they teaching for the sake of trying to bring lost sheep into the fold, or are they doing it for selfish reasons? Are they doing it for more money? Are they doing it to be held up in high esteem by the people around them? Only God knows the motives of the heart, and he can perfectly judge that. We can look at fruit and get an idea, but only he can really know what's going on in the hearts and the minds of people. And he will be the righteous judge.